Borda, sit Mike Donald, wedi bod Rhan idw i Criso i fi'n cartref môr. Good morning. I'm Ron, and welcome to my spooky home. And I'm still working on jigsaw puzzle. Yes, it's Josephine Wall. As roommate to be and I discussed a couple weeks ago. Josephine, oh, damn it. Oh, fuck. We did not discuss the fact that I recently replaced my good, plier or, wire nips style, toenail clippers to, try and tackle my ingrown toenails. And I just, clipped those a couple days ago, got them good enough that they were bleeding for most of a day afterward. And it doesn't quite hurt to have shoes on anymore, so that doesn't go there. That might make my task somewhat easier, and why would I want that? That would be silly. So, yeah, as a roommate to be and I discussed a couple of weeks ago, Josephine Wall is to pagan art as, like, she's like that oddly good velvet Elvis portrait, like you see this sea of really kitschy, tacky velvet portraits of Elvis at any given flea market, for example. And even if they have a solid technique, most of them just aren't very good. Like the painter might understand like the advantages of using velvet as a canvas, that it has the advantage of being as much a part of the medium of the painting as the paint itself, but they're not quite working that to their advantage. I've seen some really good velvet paintings, though, not just Elvis's, but like you see the really good velvet paintings, and on the one hand, you have this kind of visceral reaction to a velvet painting for being a velvet painting, right? And but then, like when you see a really good one, and I've seen some really good ones, some of the really good ones I've seen are kind of that negative space kind of drawing where like they're drawing like the it's like almost sort of like film noir esque in how it's done up, like it's making really good use of like negative space, like the white areas versus like the black and the dark, and it's like really using the velvet canvas medium to its advantage. I'm sure there are some that aren't based on negative space that are indeed really good, but yeah, like you're also like taken aback that this is a really good painting that's also a velvet painting. And Josephine Wall is kind of like that. Like, like she's brightly colored, she uses like these really bright colors, and like to the point that it's kind of gaudy and garish at times, right? Like, or at least that's just the sort of visceral reaction. But like when you go in and like really study her work, like really just take it in and get like a good look at it, right? Just like really, she is immensely detailed. Um, like like her her work on faces is it, the detail on her faces is kind of like on par with like the best of the Renaissance painters, you know, like just cherry blossom, getting new roommate. Um, yeah, there's a long story. I don't want to get into that, but you know, I had a roommate when I moved in here. Roommate decided to end her part of the lease before the end of the first month, even though we were signed on till August. Like it was like an 8 month, just to keep his paperwork just to make his paperwork easier to keep. The landlord at the new place um, likes to have the leases um, end in August and begin in September, just because you know it's a uni area, so um, you know that's like tends to be the standard when a lot of people are moving out and moving in, right? So keep it on a standardized schedule. It'll be a pain in the ass to a handful of people, but um, for the most part, you know when you're least, you know. But aside from that, it's like you also have the you know, on the plus side, you also know when your lease ends and when it begins, and it's like you know, you and all your neighbors, and it's not like this weird wonky schedule for the most part. So previous tenant was so current landlord, he's actually like a really sweet guy, and like his one character flaw is that he is also a landlord, but at the same time, this isn't his primary source of income. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm hoping it's nothing sketchy, but but if it is, hopefully he's smart about it. So let's just leave that where it is, and and then what happens is is then what? So yeah, he was acquiring another building, and the one of the plus sides he saw to acquiring this other building, which I'm not living in. I'm living in one he's done owned for a while now, but yeah, then what happens? So I one of the bonuses he saw to acquiring new building, which we shall call new building. So when he was acquiring new building, one of the bonuses he saw was like, okay, so he had a tenant in this unit, not before me, right? I know, like people exist before I did. So weird. Uh, I kid. I seriously do. I'm not that obnoxious, but then what happens? So the previous tenant was older, disabled. This is the second floor, so um, current landlord, his name is Barry, and you know, since he is a landlord, he's got a lot of info like registered with local government shit, so I don't feel bad about dropping his name. Uh, you know, like he knew when he signed up that he was going to lose some amount of privacy by being a landlord. That's why I don't feel bad about talking shit about Barnes and Barnes, previous landlord who I am going to sue. I don't want to get into that right now, but um, I have a potentially solid small claims case just because, you know, like it wouldn't exceed 30K, but that's another story for another time, and I'm not going to get into that right now. But but where was I going? Right, Barry, current landlord. Right. So yeah, we're gonna call him Barry because that's his name, and he knew when he started landlording that he was going to lose a modicum of privacy. So then what happens? So yeah, Barry was buying new building, moved um, old guy into new building, and but he was doing it before the lease for this unit ended. So basically, Um, he's done it like, you know, like um, new old roommate and I were taking over old guy's lease, and so like in that weird area between like a sublet and a new lease, right? So it's like, we're not expecting him to move back in, but it's not it's not the standard full lease, right? So then what happens was, so yeah, old guy moved out, and old guy, according to Barry, was literally the only tenant in this building for the last couple years who did not have a cat. This is important. Trust me, this is important. So old guy did not have a cat. Old guy, um, left to his own devices, even without massive, like major depressive disorder, um, was like a legit pathological hoarder. He was able to keep it, he was able to keep it under control to a certain extent, but, um, you know, unlike myself, who's like, I balk at the notion that I'm clutter blind because I have ADHD, so I'm quite aware of the clutter that accumulates around me. My issue is that um, I don't start thinking it's normal, which is what like clutter blindness kind of suggests. Like I don't start thinking this is normal. I don't start thinking this is, like an okay way to live. I just get overwhelmed and procrastinate, and yet um um um, um how to ADHD did a really good like little video summary about how that works, that like you procrastinate, which leads to more clutter, which causes stress, which leads to more clutter, which you're acutely aware of because you cannot ignore it, your brain won't let you. So you're acutely aware of the problems, but so yeah, like old guy was truly clutter blind. Like he saw no issue here, and he saw no issue with things if they got a bit out of hand. I'm also under the impression that old guy had previously been homeless, so um, I myself was street homeless for a time, and it sucks. And um, while my street homelessness was lasted a shorter time than what I'm guessing his was, just talking to him because he's a sweet old guy. Um, but yeah, so yeah, like I said, I can imagine from talking to him that being homeless for as long as he was, like much of this like street homeless, by which I mean like not necessarily literally sleeping on the streets every night, but um, like sometimes, hopefully you'll be able to find a shelter in the winter, but if it's full in the summer, um, the streets are what they are, right? It, it's it's better than death, I suppose. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, old guy. So I can kind of understand. It's not gonna be on the same level as how it messed with his head, but like being street homeless for a time. But like I said, having been street homeless myself, I can kind of understand. Um, I can kind of at least make sense of how like clutter and grime would just not even occur to him as an issue, whereas my brain, it's not truly I don't get truly clutter blind. I'm acutely aware of the issue at all times. I just circuits overload, and I end up procrastinating from the stress that um because like a big issue with me, as I said to a social worker in the middle of um, major depressive disorder a while back. That my issue is I have no idea where to begin to tidy shit up when it gets bad. So, and not knowing where to start leads to procrastination, which causes stress, which causes clutter, which adds to stress, which it's an endless cycle. And like I said, How to ADHD, she did a really good little summary of how that works. And it's a lot more animated than I'm being right now, like in the description, the overall, like, how she, you know, says it and all. Whereas me, I'm on my meds. In fact, I got back on my meds today. There was a couple of days where I literally could not. And like yesterday, oh my God, yesterday, I'm ready to go to Walgreens. The Walgreens app was telling me that the location I go to, like I was prepared to get my shit yesterday. But it told me that for some reason that location closed on at 9 on Saturdays lately. And so I kind of took that as true, even though my better judgment was saying, don't trust the app. The app has lied to you before. Not necessarily about this, but just in general. The Walgreens app is insane. I'm not the only person who thinks so. Um, I'm on a pretty good speaking relationship, like speaking business, relationship with my pharmacist out at Walgreens. So then what happens is yeah, like it's all anonymized, but she's told me that I am so far from the only person who gets into arguments with the app, even like at the hey, even like at the you know chemist counter and all that. And it's not even an issue that is contained to people with ADHD meds, right? Like, like this is an issue that like is not even like this is not even a neurodivergent issue. This is like literal. This is just like a literal Walgreens app issue. Like whoever coded their app is either high or trolling, right? Like that's how wonky it is. That is how, stupid it is. That is how much grief it causes everybody who comes in contact with it, right? But at the same time, it's also the fastest and most efficient way to put in it in order for my meds to be refilled. So it's one of those things where it's like, I kind of have to deal with how stupid this is. Um, because otherwise, like, when I was still just like, calling up the chemist a couple times a month to have meds refilled, I would legit forget to get things refilled like in a timely fashion. When it's on the app, I can be farting around on, like whatever little tiny game about fruit that I'm working on this week or whatever, and suddenly I remember, oh shit, I should refill my meds. And I just, you know, for like 3 seconds, close out of the tiny game about fruit, open up the app for Walgreens, and usually it works to, get my meds refilled. Every once in a while, though, is that every once in a while, when it does something stupid, it is spectacularly stupid. And you will sit there arguing with technology for who knows how the hell long, and nobody's gonna, you know, people who are not as familiar with the app are gonna think you're insane, but, you know, honestly, it would be no better for them. They might think that they'd be better off with it. They are wrong. They are wrong. And I know this because I used to be one of those people. I would be at like Walgreens being all like, "Hey, yo, I'm like just Gen X. I have a Like I grew up in that sweet spot, like while computers were starting to take over, but while but I still know how to operate a rotary telephone, and I still had a rotary telephone in my home for a good long time. And not just because I'm a weirdo who enjoys using antique appliances and all that. I mean, because, like, my parents were just like, it works, we're using it. And why were they like that? Because they were old. I'm not quite sure what that is all about. But yeah, so I used to be like one of those like Gen X dipshits like 10 years ago who'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you're like I'm just old enough that like I understand like why people older than me are having issues with the phone apps, but I'm not going to be like that." And then I get it updates and I am totally like that. Or not all the time, granted, not all the time, but just often enough that I start, questioning my life choices. And but yeah, new roommate. So yeah, new old roommate. We're gonna call her hippie dipshit. Her name is Serena Gibson, and she is completely delusional. But I'll get to that. But for the most part, let's call her a hippie dipshit, right? Because it's fitting. Because it's fitting. There's a friend of mine who has listened to me ramble on long and hard about hippie dipshit, and she agrees. There is a point where you gotta say Serena's fucking delusional. So the clever nickname of hippie dipshit is very suiting. But I digress. So yeah, because we're gonna try and play nice for a moment here. Um, Serena, aka hippie dipshit, she's she moved in a little bit more gradually than I did. There is a story there. I don't want to get into it, but anyway, she gets her shit in here on the first of the month. Okay, fine. This is all well and good. This is generally expected. No issues so far. And then, but because I had stuff started to move in like, over like a week and a half prior because of reasons. I was here like Cats and I moved like first night. Like, first night it was like me, the cats things for the most part, and a handful of my own items that I absolutely needed for the weekend. And and one of these items ended up not being my pajama bottoms. So um that is something that is on my list of things that need to be replaced, and I will sue, but I digress. So anyway, I tell hippie dipshit. Well, actually, first I tell the landlord. First, I tell Barry, hey, I know that this is just like a general, like, common enough old house issue, but I'm pretty damn sure that I heard a mouse last night. This is like last week of January. So I say to him, let's just say the 27th. Let's say January 27th. I tell him I heard a mouse. And I was pretty damn sure it was indeed a mouse that I heard because the cats got very interested very quickly. And he says, okay, yeah, no problem. Old guy was kind of slobby, but nothing that we couldn't keep under control for the most part. But he also was the only one who didn't have cats. So if there's still a couple, if there's still a mouse or two that, like I said, it's a common old house issue. This house that the apartment is part of. So, in it's fairly common around the Midwest, by which I mean like the Great Lakes area. I'm not sure exactly how common this is the further out west you go, just because the houses get generally newer the further out west you go. But This is one of many Victorian houses in the general area that's been divided up into four apartments. I have seen Victorian houses in the area that have been divided up into as many as seven apartments in one house, but that is not this house. This house it has been chopped up into a fairly reasonable enough four units. Um, and so, yeah, much like the old house in Lansing, which was in Oldstown. Now, Oldstown is not the same as the Old Town district of Lansing. Old Town is a it's kind of it's kind of like a glorified little pocket of the downtown of like the more historic part of downtown Lansing, whereas Oldstown is OLDSTOWN. So like all one word. Oldstown. That's the name of the neighborhood, whereas Old Town is two words. Like when you like look at most little neighborhood maps of Lansing. So anyway, Oldstown was where Best X and I were at the old house in Lansing. The Oldstown house we were at in Lansing was one of many that were built from a Sears kit. Way back in the 20s and 30s, Sears would offer little kit houses. Like they would ship you all this stuff. There's a Buster Keaton movie about this. It's a short movie. I've seen it. I think I did. Oh yeah, yeah. This was in one of my silent film vlog videos. So yeah. Um, it's a short film. It's like maybe half an hour long. But yeah, it's about a little couple. They get married. They're given a kit house to build. Um, they're given a kit house to build, and hijinks ensue because it's Buster Keaton, right? So anyway, um, we were in one of the few remaining Sears houses from the air that were in the area. Like a lot of them had just like gotten like too dilapidated and ended up somehow like demolished and replaced, you know. But yeah, we were in one of the few that was still structurally sound enough to remain standing, and like was still on its like original foundations and hadn't been significantly added to. Like it's kind of cool. I kind of like it was a shitty little house. It was a shitty little house. Like it was billed as a two-bedroom house, but in for all intents and purposes, it was basically a one-bedroom house. It was basically a one-bedroom house. Like it was like um by the square feet that they could claim it on, which was like, like the first level. Like you can't technically claim attic as living space or basement as living space. So like when you see, like, Murnau, please, this is a puzzle. You're gonna get in the way, and things are gonna go flying. And okay, so but yeah, like that was like a 550 square foot house, right? Like barely one bedroom. I'd say it was a little bit more than like what it was one bedroom, but like the other room that they were trying to like um call a bedroom, um we kind of used it as like a all-purpose like game. We used it as a gaming room. We used it as a board game room. We stored bookshelves full of Scott's like RPG books on there and all that. So yeah, like it was like a utility slash game board game room. Um, whereas considering most of that time that Best X and I were at the Old Town House in Lansing, we were no longer a couple. We were already exes. My room was the attic. My room was the attic. Why? Because because I was short enough that my head didn't bump the ceiling. So you see why the attic isn't claimed in like the rental ad as living space, right? So anyway, the like I said, the old townhouse in Lansing, that was made from a Sears kit. It was still structurally sound, but because this is a house that So yeah, like Sears kits, were like shipped out, and houses very quickly assembled to accommodate Oldsmobile employees because Oldsmobile was based in Lansing. Um, anyway, and yeah, we had like one of the last, few houses that, hadn't been significantly added to that like was still standing on its original foundation. I liked it. Like for a funky, shitty little house. I kind of liked it, and I liked the fact that it was just like so like this house was like nearing 100 years old. Not quite. I mean, it's closer to 100 years old now, but it's like, whereas this house here that this apartment is in is older than that. Um, Now, without getting into the archive, back into the archive photos and all that at the Historical Society Museum, which I could do, I would probably know where to look within the archive as well. I am guessing this house was, now it doesn't have one of the little plaques out on front, which that just means like they can't trace this house to anybody significant who lived in the area around the time the house was erected, right? So that's what those plaques generally mean, at least based on my knowledge from having worked for the Historical Society Museum, right? So anyway, where was I going? Right. This house, I would guess, just like based on some of the houses around it, looking at some of the architectural um, um, peculiarities about it, I'm guessing this house was probably made 1880s, 1890s. So it's about 120 years old, 120, 130 years old, right? It is well over a century old. Mice will get into the walls during the winter. This is just, it's a feature of old houses, because they're made of wood. They're made of wood. Like, I can't sum it up any other way other than like they're made of wood. Like, you didn't get mice that much at the old apartment because that was erected in the 50s. It's made of concrete. It's like its foundation is its foundation, its support beams, it's concrete, right? Yes, there is wooden drywall in the process of the of even this house. Like some of the like this wall here, this is like a drywall replacement, but some of the walls in the hallway I can tell are actually no, like I think this yeah, this wall was probably put in um around the time it was chopped up into apartments. Just just looking at some of the peculiarities of the placement. You, when you work for historical society and you and you get really into antiques and shit, you start to just recognize these things, even if you don't know the architectural terms for them and all that. Um, so yeah, like I can tell this wall here was like put in around the time it was chopped up into apartments, but that's another story for another time. A lot of the walls in the hallway are original and they're just gorgeous. But yeah, this house is made of wood. Its foundation, its support beams, it's wood. So mice are going to find flaws in that. Why? Mice are familiar with wood. When you get to the species of mice that still live out in the wilderness, out in the woods, well, what are trees made of? They're made of wood. Like, they're going to find a way to, like, find, like, a hole, like, either within the trunk or just under the trunk, like, during the winter to, like, kind of, like, huddle up together and stay warm and shit. So, mice will apply that same logic, that same instinctual familiarity with wood and like how to, and plus like they kind of need to like gnaw on shit because they're rodents or their teeth will continue growing their whole lives because rodents just be weird like that. But so yeah, because it's an old wood house, mice will find a way in during the winter. They will find a way in. They will kind of like sleep in the walls during the day. And for the most part, well, so cats aren't technically nocturnal. I forget the term for it, but it it describes that their most active period is during the periods of, their most active period during the day is during dawn and dusk. At least this is how it works with the African wildcat, which is to the house cat as the Eurasian gray wolf is the domestic doggo. And I just like saying domestic doggo. It just, I don't know, it's funny. So anyway, um, whereas with house cats, because they've like adapted to indoor life. Well, this is one of the reasons that they have crazy time, right? Like cats will have crazy time. A lot of times it will be around dawn or dusk, like, or approximately, like, I don't know, um, approximately thereabouts if you pay enough. But then, like, then there are some cats who, like myself, like, I'm naturally a more nocturnal person. I've always been a more awake person after literal noon, like, 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 like global noon, like when the like natural noon, so like, even um, like so accounting for like daylight savings in the US or summertime in most of the EU. So like accounting for that, like I would be a bit more awake like around 11 a.m., and later, whereas like during the rest of the year, it's like noon, like natural like natural solar noon. That's what they call it. Like solar noon, that is about where I tend to wake up. Like not just physically, but like mentally. Like I can physically make myself wake up earlier than that. I've done it for years off, periodically, but it is not how my brain functions best. Um, when I was going to kindergarten at St. Adalbert, they had AM kindergarten and PM kindergarten. Um, I went to the PM kindergarten class. Um, now, at first you might think, now for a lot of kids, whether they went to AM kindergarten or PM kindergarten, it was based more on like what was a bit more convenient for the parents, right? Um, like a lot of times, if the kindergartner had older siblings who were going to classes at the school, like they go to AM kindergarten just to like be all dropped off at the same time, even though they'd get picked up like halfway through the day so that the PM kindergarten could come in. Um, but yeah, I went to PM kindergarten, and um, so like during that couple of years, because my younger sister was like a year and a half behind me, and all that. So, but still, so like it's like when I'm in second grade and she's in kindergarten, my mother was still on call, right? So she didn't really have a set schedule, um, and she was one of a few nurses on call at the time, so she didn't have a set schedule except for weekends. But then, like, Monday through Friday was on call, right? And because ER nurse, and then what happens? So you'd think that so she was able to come pick up Molly, my younger sister, my late younger sister. Just for those who might have noticed and you're not regulars yet, like, yeah, I try to maintain a sense of privacy for other people, as you know, unless I have it cleared with them. But it's like, if you're dead, or like a landlord, if you're a quasi, public-ish, because like I said, like, due to like local ordinances, landlords have to have some kind of like public registration and all of that. But so Barry, no, he knew when he signed up for this that every once in a while, shit like me would happen. So then what happens was, so yeah, I went to PM kindergarten, and I had older sisters who were, a like, I had two older sisters who were attending school, like, um, 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 um yeah, like my eldest sister who was in high school at the time, yeah, like, it was like a high school senior when I was in kindergarten. She didn't have a car. She didn't have her own car, so of course, like, mom would drop her off to school, and then later in the day go take me to kindergarten because I was just a more awake person later in the day. Whereas my younger sister Molly, she was always a morning person, and, like, sometimes nauseatingly perky about it. God damn, I don't understand morning people. I really don't. Like, but yeah, so, like, I got on this tangent because, for the most part, like, humans have evolved to be diurnal. For the most part, that's why, like, there's a um 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 that, like, well, we have the days that we do. We just kind of evolved in this way, and as annoying as it can be to people like me, that's just, like, kind of an evolutionary quirk that we just kind of have. But every once in a while, there's a weirdo like me who is just, like, a more awake person later in the day, and literally always has been. Um, Whether this is due to, neurodivergence, in my case ADHD, or what, who knows? I don't know. I don't know. I don't rightly care. All I know is that I all I know is that, like, I end up arguing with, like, just society sometimes, and I say that, like, I say arguing in, like, a very broad sense. It's not like I just sit there and, like, shout out to the ethers of whatever. I just sometimes I will say, just, like, some of the stupidest shit is, like, having an argument with technology, right? Like, or, but whatever. So yeah, like, I'm just a more awake person later in the day. My younger sister, so yeah, I got onto this because of mice. So yeah, mice, left to their own devices, for the most part, are, that that dawn and dusk active, right? And so cats, for the most part, have evolved that way. Whereas, like, but then when you get to house cats, which is, like, my cats, where you can say with a solid certainty that, you know, evolutionarily speaking, as especially as far as, like, mentality goes, like, their neurology goes, my cats are pretty well domesticated. Like, there are many there are many instinctual generations removed from um the idea of, like, even the idea of being feral, right? Even, like, an idea of being, like, feral members of their subspecies, much less, the wild members of their subspecies, right? So, or, like, the wild counterpart of their subspecies, right? Like African and Eurasian wildcats versus, like, the house cat. It's like, technically, Canis lupus is, like, you've got Canis lupus lupus, which is the Eurasian gray wolf, Canis lupus dingo, which most Canis lupus domestic, I think, is, Canis lupus domesticus is, like, the domestic doggo. Um, most most domestic doggos have more DNA in common with the Canis lupus dingo subspecies than they do the Eurasian gray wolf. But the Eurasian gray wolf gets all the credit, right? I don't understand this, but yeah, like, it's been genetically examined that, yeah, like, they have more genetic markers in common with the Canis lupus dingo subspecies, like most dog breeds. And then there are some dog breeds where, like, you can tell just by looking at them and, yeah, verify it with DNA testing that, like, oh yeah, yeah, you're genetically not too far from a Eurasian gray wolf. You are. definitely, a subspecies of that. But I digress. So yeah, like, so like myself, who is like part of this, like, that's just like this kind of like evolutionary anomaly where my brain just functions better after, like high solar noon, right? That's just how my brain operates. I am very alive, mentally functioning, um, around, from like sunset until about 4 a.m., right? I'd say like around 2 a.m. for the most part. Around like, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., that's when my body like starts to wind, likes to wind down and, get ready to go to sleep. So, so yeah, like much like, like evolutionary anomalies like myself, you see this in cats sometimes as well, where like, especially like, the house cat, where, like they just don't, like naturally, like function, especially wide awake and all that at like dawn and dusk periods or the equivalent thereof. Um, 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 and so, like, mice that have adapted to living in otherwise human community, human lands, like, well, a city here, like we're in, um, sometimes you'll see these little, like, evolutionary adaptations where they don't completely, like, they're a bit more awake, like, nocturnally, right? That, hi, because they've kind of adapted that, like, okay, okay, it's like somewhere in the genetic line, their neurology is like, okay, okay, there's a lot of houses in this city with cats. If cats are operating around dawn and dusk, it would be advantageous for our little brains to operate a little bit closer to night, like in the middle of the night, right? Which is like what the couple of the mice that I actually saw a couple times, but yeah, like I said, it's an old house because houses about this age, which I want to say like built between 1880 and 1900 even, right? They are made of wood. They are made of wood. Mice will find a way in. Why? Wood is what trees are made of, right? Wood is what trees are made of. And if we assume like, like they're wilderness counterparts of the species or subspecies, whichever it is that, becomes the house and field mouse, right? They're just going to be like, okay, okay, our genetic ancestors, like our ancestors, like did this with trees, and we have teeth made for gnawing into trees, so we can find a way into these houses, right? So, so yeah, it's a common issue with old houses. So, especially in the winter. Why? Because, well, you get the little like like layered walls, right? So that you can have some insulation in there that, will keep it warmer during the winter. Well, they'll find a way into the insulation or around the pipes and all that, and they'll hang out, like in the walls, when they're not active, like during their sleeping periods, because it's warm. It's warmer than sleeping outside. Um, it takes a lot less effort for mice to find a way into the walls of a house, especially if it's an old house that's been there a while, meaning they have less work to do to find a way in. You know, they don't have to create their way in. They just have to find where previous generations. Hi, yes, you're very annoying right now. His nosy is so cold and wet, and I don't know why he does this. It's like he makes it extra wet to come and be like, that kitty, pet kitty. I'm like, ah, you're so sweet, but I'm also doing a puzzle right now, little guy. You're very cute, and I love you very much, but you are just relentless sometimes, aren't you? Yes, you are. Don't deny it. Don't deny it, little noodle. I know. Poor little kitty. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, it's a common issue, especially in an old house. Mice will find a way in, and they will become less of an issue for you if you give them no reason to get into your living area. Like like if you one way to deter them is, yes, to have a cat or three, as I do, which, old guy, the previous tenant, did not. So, you get these mice that got this false sense of security. They're like, okay, no cats in this unit. If there's food on the floor, we can eat it, right? Right? And and note this, like, if there is food on the floor, meaning, like, if there is food in easy access, they can eat it. Because, well, mammals, left to our own devices, we are lazy creatures. Like, pretty much every mammal functions this way. It's like, you give a mammal an option of, like, okay, do you want to eat the food that is, like, sitting out here ready for you to eat it? Or would you rather go hunt it for yourself? Most mammals, regardless of the species, though you will occasionally get an oddball within his own species, you will get the little weirdo every once in a while who would just be like, yeah, no, I'd rather hunt than have carrion there. Like, yeah, it's clearly very fresh carrion. The rest of my pack clearly wants to eat this, but no, I'm going to go hunt something else, even though there's plenty of it for myself as well. But, so yeah, like, mammals are just like that, Like, you give a squirrel an option, like, okay, squirrel, do you want these nuts that are already sitting out here, or would you rather go in the tree and find more nut and find other nuts, different nuts from these? Even though these are right here, you can have them if you want them, but you can also, like, go into the tree and get them for yourself. The squirrel will take what's sitting out there, and once those are used up, then the squirrel will go get more nuts from the tree, right? Mice are no different. So, like, you can put out traps all you like. You can bait the traps with, like, like, I got a bad jar of peanut butter one time. Um, I say peanut butter. It was more like an almond butter, but, like, it's one of those times where I accidentally forgot to pay for it, which has happened to me occasionally because ADHD, right? Hi. Yes, your nose is cold and wet. I see you. You're a kitty. Oh my gosh, yes. We see you. We see her now. Oh my gosh, yes, you're a little kitty. You're a goofball. You're a goofy little goofball. What? What? You don't want that much attention? You just want to nose me all night? You're weird. He is. He's weird. But as I was saying, so yeah. So yeah, like, you can set out traps for mice. You can load them up with yeah, so I loaded it up with some. It was a bad jar. It was a bad jar. And I say it was a bad jar because it was just so goddamn dry. Like, it's too dry to be spreadable. But, yeah, or at least, like, conveniently. Please stop. Your tail is in the way. Thank you. Um, but then what happened? So yeah, it's like, it's not very spreadable, and I would have returned it if not for the fact that I realized after I brought it, like, shortly after I got into it, and looked for the receipt, and then I found the receipt, and then I was just like, oh shit, this was something I legit forgot to pay for. Oops. Oh well, can't return it, and I would be a and it would be a dick move if I were to do like I sometimes do when I forget to pay for something at the grocery store and, like, just slip it back onto the shelf like later in the week. It's like, well, I've already, like, opened it up, taken off the little, like, seal on top. So I figured, okay, I can probably use it for cooking or something, like if I were gonna make, like, a recipe with it, right? Um, I also decided that this is, like, it's a little bit on the dry, it's too dry to be easily spreadable, but that also makes it really, and that also makes it like a really clean bait for mouse traps. Like, they recommend peanut butter more than cheese. Like, I know the cartoons say mice love cheese, and, well, I would say that's because mice are smart in that respect. Like who doesn't love cheese? On the other hand, there are things mice love more than cheese. So so yeah, like I said, the traps that Barry provided me with, like this otherwise like really, it should have been really good um almond butter. That's what it was. Like it was like an almond butter that was like honey roasted, but like I said, like in spite of like whatever honey was involved in the recipe, it was not enough to make this spreadable. I don't know why it was so dry, but like I said, I loaded it up. Mice loved it. The first couple days we had the traps out, and then what happens? Well, Serena the hippie dipshit, I tell her about the mice before she moves all her shit in, and she says, "Oh, that's no problem. It's an old house. Yeah, you're right. It happens sometimes." And I'm like, "Cool, sweet. So we know there's an issue. There are traps, and we're gonna be smart about it." Or so she claimed. And so then what happens was Serena the hippie dipshit, she went and she got a bakery loaf of bread that she left in the bakery paper. It's got the little like plastic mylar, window in it, but it's basically paper. It's basically wrapped in paper. It's not even a proper bag. I wouldn't even call these proper bags, right? Because it's like an envelope. It's like a little envelope, like the Taco Bell wraps for the tacos. Like it's not really a bag. It's kind of, it envelops the bread, enough to keep it from drying out, and it also looks nice on the bakery rack, right? And so what happens that night? Well, after we're all asleep, the mice notice that Serena, the hippie dipshit, who has just left out her previously really nice bakery loaf on the counter in the bakery paper, like in the bakery paper wrap, like without something else to cover it. They have a feast that night, and then she has the nerve to be surprised. And she demands to know, upon waking up, why does it look like an animal's been eaten in my bread? And I say, because there are mice that I told you about a couple days ago, and which she apparently decided to ignore. It's like she seems to think that mouse traps, and then she's like, but you said our traps. I'm like, well, yeah, but the bread wasn't really like in a proper container, or like it's in a paper wrap. They're gonna get through that. And then she starts ranting and raving about how the landlord now owes her a new loaf of bread, and she starts like pulling up YouTube videos about like setting all natural mouse traps and baits and all this. Even though I set out traps, not the no-kill kind, but like legit mouse traps, right? And and all this shit, and she, you know, and like the landlord was here later that day even, because she's freaking out, and she refused to come home for several days, and this was all after she and agreed to pay me half on a really expensive order of cleaning supplies, which she has since refused to pay me back for. Like stuff that I got because, like, even though I came with basically the same thing from Grove, like like my daily shower spray. Like she's allergic to citrus. Like she can't handle citrus oils. It will break her out. She can drink grapefruit juice though. I don't understand how that works, but okay, like she'll get chemical burns from orange oil. So the one that I had was orange and rosemary. So I go out of my way to order the lavender and thyme, daily shower spray to like spritz down the wall of the showers after you before you completely emerge from the shower, right? You know, it's like I go out of my way to get like this, like a thing to like basically replace what I already came with, right? It's like it didn't have to be, but I'm going out of my way to accommodate this woman who is literally half my age, right? Like and who like I'm kind of glad that my therapist was the one who suggested this might be an issue, but she seems to have a legit, like, personality disorder. She behaves as a pathological narcissist. Not quite on par with Worst X, Isaac, but close enough that it's like after therapist pointed this out to me, I was just like, you're not wrong. You're probably not wrong. Like, you wouldn't want to, like, diagnose her, like, secondhand this way, of course, because you're a responsible professional. But yeah, like, now that you think of it, like, just the way that she just, like, went completely over the top with, with all this, like refusing to come home for days before finally deciding that, oh no, like the thing with the mice, that's like, and then she has the nerve to say that the because like the day after the bread, she brings home fresh fruit, leaves, including bananas, which she left out on a tray, like a formerly gorgeous olive wood, like decorative serving tray. She left these bananas and a couple other pieces of fruit out on there. And what happened? Mice were eating them. And because mice literally shit where they eat and see no issue with this, you know, unlike many animals a little bit higher up on the food chain, they will shit and piss right where they eat, right as they eat. And so this wooden tray, and you can't clean piss out of wood. I have had enough litter boxes on hardwood floors to that I have resurfaced because dumbass. Um, but yeah, like you cannot easily and like so like when she decided that she packed this shit and piss soaked tray, and she had the nerve to say that the only reason that the mice were eating her bananas, after she'd already confirmed to them that she is willing to leave out, an entire loaf of bread on the same tray where she left the bananas. She had the nerve to say that the mice were only attracted to her food because I leave dishes in the sink overnight sometimes. What? Like on what planet does it make sense? Like mice are very aquaphobic. So if I'm leaving like a bowl from macaroni and cheese that had some residue on it, like into in the sink to soak. First off, this it's a steel sink, right? Like it's a steel double sink. It's one of those double-sided stainless steel sinks. So they can't get a grip on the sides of this if they were going to climb into the sink. Mice, like rats, are very aquaphobic. Like they say, like rats will flee from a sinking ship, or at least make an every attempt to. Mice are very much the same way. They are very aquaphobic because they understand that they are small critters. Their likelihood of drowning is much higher than if they were larger critters, right? So somehow, Serena Gibson, the hippie dipshit, got in her head that mice are willing to brave the sink looking for smears of mac and cheese residue. So, like, they're willing to, like, dive into this stainless steel pit that they cannot naturally climb out of that has a couple inches of water in it, which is more than enough for them to drown in. Um, they are at least smart enough to assess that much, and therefore smart enough to be naturally aquaphobic, right? That this is somehow more attractive because there's like mac and cheese residue left to soak in the sink that has a few inches of water in it, right? And that's the only reason that they're going after the open food on the counter that she has left there. This woman is either delusional or so so deeply pathological in her own narcissism that she will look for anything she can grasp onto to dig her heels in, double down, and refuse to adapt to the world around her. Because, if you live in an old house, like I said, mice are a common issue in old houses. Yes, it is still structurally sound, but it is made of wood. Mice will find a way. Like, like, they'll find a way. So what do? Especially in the winter, you don't leave food open and on the counter. This is why bread boxes were invented. This is legit why, like, banana stands were invented, because, like, like, it's wire, so mice, well, more like a wrought iron, right? So, like, mice really can't climb that sort of thing without, like, something else to help them onto it. Plus, like, the whole way it's designed, it would be very, very cumbersome for your average mouse to try and climb up that, just due to what it's made out of. So like, like they're gonna have to get a workout to like get to the bananas that are hanging from that. But then there's the fact that like this house is like it's only like literally down the block and around the corner from the old apartment, right? So because it's down the block and around the corner from the old apartment, it's also a straight shot down Washtenaw number 4 bus to Arborland shopping center, where there's a Bed Bath and Beyond where they sell goddamn banana boxes just for this purpose. To like it's got enough ventilation to let the bananas ripen, but you don't put it in the fridge because that way bananas can ripen, right? Like $15 solution. But no, she'd rather like let this olive wood tray, formerly gorgeous olive wood tray, get soaked in mouse piss than admit that she fucked up. Like, so yeah, and thankfully she was the one who decided she was going to pull out of the lease, and thankfully Barry the landlord has a soul, and he says that like for March, if necessary, her deposit will go for the other half of March rent. So cool. And I do have a new roommate lined up, thankfully. Um, Turns out that I know him. Well, we have mutual friends, so it's like friend of a friend, but um, whereas initially I was, so it's like technically found him on Craigslist, but turns out we have a couple mutual friends in the local drag community. So so yeah, so and we get along great, and I've kind of noticed just from previous living situations, I don't live well with women, and I know there are people on Twitter who like if I had even double the audience I do, they'd want to crucify me for admitting that, but I'm just like I don't know. It's just I just find it very difficult to live with women, but other guys, like even straight guys, I kind of get along with a little bit. That I don't. Maybe it's got something to do with like, like whatever little toxic masculinity, social niceties or whatever that just like make it slightly more compatible with my ADHD tendencies. But I don't know. I just live a lot more easily with other guys, so. Yeah, it's yeah, so that's the I can't stand her, and she's fucking insane. And yet she has the nerve to say, I am the one who's off his gourd and is saying idiotic things. And I'm like, you are feeding mice by leaving open food on the counter. Get a banana box. It's $15. Like, hell, pay me back what you owe me. I will get the fucking banana box. Happy freaking birthday, even though that was like in December or something. Um, but yeah, yeah, no, no. She'd rather like pretend that she did nothing wrong, and so so and go like move in with her homophobic boyfriend. But so I'm like, you know what? This is fine, fine. Funny story too. Since she's moved out, I saw literally one mouse since. Um, I have seen, and the only evidence of mice, you know, aside from that one time, and it was very fleeting. It was very fleeting. It's like he he was sprinting away from the corner of the kitchen counter where she had kept her open food. So it's like this mouse clearly like went over there expecting food, discovered there was none around the same time I'm getting, I'm getting up to go drop my empty mac and cheese bowl in the sink, and I had already seen him like like dash down behind the stove, like run down and find his way behind the stove or something. So I'm just like, okay, okay, you discovered the buffet is gone, and then now like I've moved all of the traps down onto the floor. Because yeah, it turns out mouse traps are not these magical mouse seduction boxes that will, play this siren song to tempt mice into them and make them ignore all the open food on the counter. Like, no, it turns out that if you give the mouse the option between like a loaf of bread with like a flimsy paper baker wrap around it, or an open banana, like, outside of a banana box that is not sitting on one of those banana stands that keeps it about like, like just high enough up off the ground that even standing on its hind legs, the average mouse cannot get to it, right? If you got like bananas just sitting flat on the tray, and a loaf of bread and shit, that is like that just has one of those flimsy paper baker's wraps, right? Or the option of one of those tomcat traps that totally doesn't have a guillotine inside, with peanut butter smeared on the opposite side of the little opening to the box that totally doesn't have a guillotine inside. You give the mouse the option, like open food or the obstacle course that doesn't have a guillotine inside. Which do you think it's gonna pick? Even if you assume mice are stupider than we are, and I find this questionable after having lived with Serena the hippie dipshit, I find that notion questionable. But yeah, like even if you're assuming that mice are just inherently stupider than human beings, like you take like the stupidest human being, like you can take like like some, like you can get Schultze, the microcephalic from from the movie Freaks, and the stage shows, and side shows and stuff, right? Get Schultze, the microcephalic, that aka Pinhead, right? This is a person whose brain development is was so stunted that like and you can see evidence of this because his skull didn't even like grow like significantly. Like there is, like they got the nickname pinheads because of the way that the skull was shaped, which stunts the size of the brain, which stunts the capacity of the brain to develop and and have much cognitive capacity beyond the age of about 2 years old. So find me Schultz of the microcephalic, right? Like we take a time machine. Schultz of the microcephalic, probably one of the lowest IQ adults in history, right? probably like verifiable anyway. Like probably one of the lowest IQ adults in human history, human recorded history that has been verified by any way, right? So this is a human being, an adult human being who has the cognitive capacity of a child about 18 months old. You know, like they're just he just didn't develop that much further. Apparently like a really joyful, happy human being who just liked to make people smile, and so like was happiest with the sideshow and and performing, because it's like the average 18-month-old child who can walk, and yet this is a person, grown adult, who has the ability to walk, like an adult does, but the mental capacity of a child about 18 months old, so yeah, like, oh, happy play. But, like, ask Schultze, the microcephalic, okay, which which food would you rather get? Would you rather get the food that's already sitting open, or would you rather get the food that you have to crawl through a box to get, and the box totally doesn't have a guillotine inside? Even Schultze, the microcephalic, would take the food that's already sitting out. And like I said, and I'm drawing this analogy because if you want to operate from the assumption that mice are inherently stupider than human beings, well, like I said, take one of the lowest, confirmed, you know, cognitively developed, like one of the least cognitively developed adult humans in recorded history, Schultz the microcephalic, right? And even he would rather take the food that's already sitting out in the open because, well, why crawl through the box that totally doesn't have a guillotine inside to get that little smear of peanut butter on the opposite side of the box when there's already food sitting out? But Serena Gibson, hippie dipshit, she thinks I'm the one who's stupid. She thinks I'm the one who's crazy, saying the most idiotic things she's ever heard. And I'm like, honey, no, you just don't want to admit that you messed up. That's the problem. That's her issue. Yeah, like, thankfully, like, though she recognized it for the wrong reasons, I'm glad she left before, it got further into this. And I'm really glad, what nickname am I gonna give new roommate? I don't know. But he might be up for doing some videos sometime. I mentioned to him that I do YouTube videos, and, oh, okay, I know about where this goes. So yeah, I mentioned to him that I do YouTube videos, and that they're mostly stupid, but it entertains me, and sometimes it entertains other people, and I even explained to him, like, the whole Puzzlestream thing, that I started doing it as kind of like this weird homage in my head anyway, to, Andy Warhol's, short, like, 15, like, under 20-minute film. Andy Warhol eats a cheeseburger. And it's just like Andy Warhol sitting at a table in an otherwise undecorated white room, and he sits down with a cheeseburger from Burger King too, and he introduces the film. Hello, I'm Andy Warhol, and I'm going to eat a hamburger, and then proceeds to eat a hamburger, and so yeah, I explained to him that, like, that's like kind of like how I started out with the puzzle streaming was I'd yeah, like the earliest puzzle streams, they should still be up in archive. It's just me doing a jigsaw puzzle for hours on end before the camera. The earliest ones, I don't say a damn thing. I just do it, or at least not to anybody watching anyway. I didn't interact with with the live stream audience for, oh God, at least like the first. I did not interact with the audience in the live chat for at least the first 7 or 8 puzzle streams I did. Oh my gosh, the chat just kept going, and I didn't even notice it. Okay, Cherry Blossom says my hair is looking so good. I'm guessing this was hours ago, or whatever, because I lost track of time, and I can't, like, the contrast isn't very good. Then Cherry Blossom says, understand, did not know Ypsilanti had frat houses. I have a friend that drives around there and films, so is this a new house you're in? Cherry Blossom says, they're a clutter-blinded person as well. Keep accumulating stuff. Done so many puzzles since the worldly mess happened. Lucas says, hello there, gorgeous. Oh, thank you. I'm assuming that was meant to me. Lucas then says, amount of puzzles. Oh, yeah. Prefer the 1,000 piece. Oh, yeah, yeah. This one right here is a 1,000 piece. I was going on about a Josephine Wall earlier. Yeah, not too big, not too small. It depends. He's beautiful, isn't he? Me too. I put 1,000 pieces here together. That was 3 feet long, and never again. Catch crepuscular. Okay, that's the word. Okay, Lucas says, want to know some real freaky facts about mice? Oh dear. All the space a mouse needs to get into a place is the girth of a pencil. Oh dear. They can squeeze themselves in through such a small hole. Oh, I guess that makes sense. I mean, cats can get in through very tiny spaces as well. And I mean, I know cats and mice are very far, apart, evolutionarily, biologically speaking, but it kind of makes sense in a way that you know that that um that they'd both adapt in that way to, like, get into increasingly smaller spaces. Like, there's this mouse would come around every Tuesday for tacos and would sit on the counter, and I would put a piece of cheese out for him, and he crept to me and took the cheese and ate it right there. Uh, that reminds me of the episode of Bob's Burgers where Teddy says um, that he saw a rat in a hat twice. Same rat, different hat. And the second time when he took a picture, and he says, and the rat's just looking at me like, what are you looking at? Same rat, different hat. Lucas also has 3 cats, so the might. Oh yeah, yeah. Now that the cats have established themselves, and oh yeah, yeah. Like when I was yeah, the last time I saw evidence of mice since Serena the hippie dipshit moved out, they like to eat the dish soap that I get. So I don't want to get up from the table right now, but so I get a lot of my cleaning supplies. I get most of my cleaning supplies at this point from Grove Collaborative. They do all natural stuff. That's like the major selling point that they use. Um, the reason I'm so faithful to them is because their tub and tile cleaner. Oh my god, this gets hair dye out. This is the only like all natural, sustainable ingredient cleaner I have personally used that will get hair dye out. And I'm not actually like I'd want to test it with henna. Like henna, I'd say is like a next level hair dye stain. You'd think henna, being the all natural hair dye, would be somehow easier to get out. It is not. It is worse. Somehow it's worse. Somehow it leaves stains even harder the uh, than the peroxide developer stuff that I've gone back to using. But but yeah, the Grove Collaborative, like I said, their tub and tile cleaner gets hair dye out. that is like my gold standard for cleaners. Like, does it get hair dye out? Because no matter what kind of precautions I make to try and avoid it, I will get hair dye all over everything in the bathroom. Maybe not all over, but it will happen. Hair dye likes to make itself very well known in my bathroom. Cherry Blossom says, last summer, your hubby for the cat, he was black and white with collar, and his name was Sylvester, and didn't belong to anyone, so kept him for 4 weeks. And he kept going to the back door to find. He had a girlfriend. She was so fluffy, white, and said she can come into, and he wandered, and I opened the door, and he went, "Oh."
Oh my god, the dude is still going down this road. Seriously, it's like a year apart, practically, maybe 9 months apart, and the guy is still.
Guess your magic talking. No, don't worry about it. Okay, so.
Whisper into the microphone, "We're coming for you," and claim that it's a demon. Give me a break, please.
I don't know how much you can hear Owen Morgan with Telltale Atheist going on in the other room. I just like loaded up some YouTube stuff to have some background sound. Um, I thought it was going to be a shorter one of his before getting into some Welsh language music. A lot of modern pop style Welsh language music. I've been getting really into that lately. Um, for good reason, of course. But but yeah, I guess it was a longer one of his. I don't mind because why? He's goddamn delicious. He's hot. He's just hot. I'm sure there are going to be people who want to argue with me about that, but I'm like, look, he's just gorgeous. He's just gorgeous. I don't care. I mean, yeah, and Justin Wayne is also just goddamn gorgeous. He's delicious. I want to lick his face. Consensually, of course. Consensually, of course. I don't want to be the creepy guy. But, you know, like if I ever get a chance to meet Justin Wang at some kind of event, I'm gonna say, hey, I've been talking to my own YouTube people for a while about how much I want to lick your face. So I just gotta ask, like, I will accept it if you say no, but this has just kind of been an ongoing thing with me and my YouTube audience and my own YouTube audience for a while, is how much I want to lick your face. And if he's especially cool, I'm sure he'd understand and chuckle and just be like, okay, sure, just one quick little lick for the camera. Just like, don't linger your tongue. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not gonna be too weird. I mean, you gotta say not gonna be too weird, because if you're because if you're like asking for a favor like that, like, can I lick your face? Just gonna be weird. That's gonna be weird. You gotta accept that that's just gonna be weird, and you know, and it's just like how some people are. Some people are just kind of weird, and it's only a problem if you want it to be a problem. And I don't think being weird is necessarily a problem. So yeah, as far as my WFKU shift goes, that is currently on hiatus. I have no idea what the hell is going on with the Barry the landlord suggested that I may need to this is because I was describing the issue to him. So it's like my computer in my bedroom will connect to the internet. It will log on to the internet. The Ethernet is like completely recognized and all of that, and it has no problem with that. It has no problem loading up Microsoft Edge. It has no problem running other apps that require the internet, like Discord. But it has given me a headache and a half trying to run mix for my DJ shifts. And I have no idea what the hell to do about this. None of the settings have changed. I certainly didn't change any since moving. Like it is the same settings as they were at the old place, and yet here I am, unable to log in at the new place. So Barry the landlord suggested it might be I might have to like go into the program settings and give the new IP address because that changes based on like physical location um, and connection and all of that. Um, that's one of the that's one of the technical thing. Like, there's a couple videos where people get into the like the technical issues of like like why it won't hold up in court if somebody wanted to say that if somebody wanted to point out that creep show art Shannon was determined by the lolcow admins to be like self-posting and all of this, and they determined this through IP. So like that won't hold up in court just because it's a number of IP addresses that were determined to very likely be Shannon. So so yeah, it's like so any device that logs onto the internet has a unique IP address that is based on not just the device itself, but also the connection that is being used to connect it to the internet, right? So, like that's one of the that's what a VPN does. A VPN will give the device a virtual a virtual connection that is completely different from where you physically are. So if Creepshow Art Shannon was smart, she would have been using one of those to make it less likely, and like would have been like a different one each time logged in, just to make it less likely to determine it was her, but she's not as smart as she thinks she is. And I'm not going to be one of those people who's just like, oh yeah, I thought there was something weird about her from the beginning, because like I genuinely thought she was kind of likable before all of that happened. And then it did happen, and um, people were pointing out that well, no, like yeah, she was technically homeless for a while, but she kind of also obfuscated that this was a conscious decision that she and Anthony made to save money. And then like you go and like they'd replay like bits where she talked about that, and I was just like, God damn, you're right. That like I thought that was like some kind of like little thing in common, but it turned out it's like yes and no, because it's like I was street homeless. I was not street homeless as a means to save money. So it's like I didn't even have a car to live out of, in part because I do not see well enough to have a license, much less have enough money to own a car. Hey, sweet. I love it when my little method of like just turn it around and try and see where it fits will often save me. But yeah, where was I going? Right. So yeah, Barry the landlord suggested that like maybe I see if Mix wants me to like set the IP address um for the connection like somewhere within the program, like preferences for it. So I'm gonna look into that a little bit more like tomorrow, probably after my therapist appointment. I've tried that a couple times in that position. I know that doesn't fit there. Why do I keep trying it? Because even though my mother had me tested and she said I had a 157 IQ, sometimes I can be dumb as shit.
Everybody has a line. It's just where do you draw that line? In my opinion, there really is
But
not much
yeah,
you
like
can do.
the animal kingdom can be goddamn weird, and humans are not exempt from this. Humans are not exempt from this. Like, if you think about it, people are probably crazier than the rest of the animal kingdom.
Nothing we can do.
I believe that wholeheartedly.
They want to write it in a book. Nothing we can
We
do.
are a weird ass
I think
species.
the line for me personally,
We're weird creatures who do weird things,
if they want to go into
like
a
jigsaw
private
puzzles.
business and start spouting
Nah,
nonsense
like in the
about
term of
food,
weird things people do, jigsaw puzzles are
if they
pretty
want
low
to
on
force their
weird.
opinions down people's throats,
It's
we
like,
don't want to hear it. We have different
hey,
situations.
hey.
If they want to mix it into government, different situation. That's where my line is for freedom of speech.
Oh, I did hear an end click.
The Bible's like
Oh, no. We've got another one. Is this like some kind of like compilation reel of his? I don't mind, because he's gorgeous. He's gorgeous. So, like, why do I think Justin Wang would be slightly more likely to allow me to lick his face than Owen Morgan? Even though Owen Morgan has been, like, openly advocating for LGBTQ persons, whereas Justin Wang, it's just kind of accepted that he's most likely LGBTQ friendly. He doesn't say too much about it on his channel because, well, that's not what he makes videos about. Um, he makes videos about weird shit on the internet and weird shit through the history of the internet because, well, the internet is a weird place full of weird people. Um, but it's just kind of a given that like like uh, like weird gays have been a part of weird internet history and all of that. So yeah, this is kind of like, I mean, he hasn't been at all, homophobic or anything, but it's the fact that Justin Wang is is the fact that he embraces the weird parts of the internet. He embraces the weirdness of the internet, like not the disturbing, not the especially disturbing anyway, like some of the like internet investigator will do. Oh my god, and like the way she recites these scripts that she does up for those videos, that just kind of like adds to the unnerving kind of feel. I'm sure a part of that is, like obviously her natural voice, but like yeah, but like acted up slightly in one direction or another just to, for part of the character for the videos. It's the fact that Justin Wang is just like I said, he just like openly embraces like the weird parts of the internet, like the goofy weirdness that's online. So like that's why I think, even though Owen Morgan has been like more explicitly LGBT friendly, Justin Wang is just like, he can't not be. And he just like, I don't know, he's just he's got this kind of like, at least on his YouTube anyway, he puts out this persona of kind of like the, like Wayne and Garth, like just kind of goofy, little sarcastic, kind of happy-go-lucky at times, and just like a little smarter than he may look at first. And of course, he's a musician, so I'm sorry. There's like, oh gosh, I forget where he's based out of, but like there is like not a single um like even when like you get into like the little like smaller pockets of the Los Angeles area music scene where I was, living amongst when I was out that way, there's not a single, like even like little pocket within the music scene as a whole out there, especially the independent music scene. Like, the, musicians just tend to be very sexually open or at least, accepting. So I'm just like, yeah, he's also a musician, so I'm just like, yeah, no, Justin Wang. I want to like, if given the opportunity of like, okay, you can meet either one of these guys at an event, or like maybe you can meet both, but you can only ask one of them to lick his face. I'd just be like, well, I have a better chance of I have a better chance of Justin Wang taking that with like, the humor it's intended. Whereas Owen, I'm sure he wouldn't think poorly of me because like at least I'm asking and not just like mauling him, but I think it would be a bit more off-putting to him. I don't know. Or maybe I'm underestimating him. Maybe he is a bit weirder than the impression that I've so far, gotten. And if that's the case, awesome. But I'd rather play it safe and just be like, nah, no, I know from experience, musicians are musicians put up with all kinds of weird shit. This is one of the least weird things. Like on a scale of like weird shit musicians, will put up is like especially like like actively performing stage musicians will put up with, from like like handshake for a fan being like very low weird to I don't know. Let's put stalker like active like dangerous stalking stuff, like put that up here for like weird shit, like on a scale of like like just like a handshake or like a little like we're assuming more contact with fans than an email, right? So like a handshake, maybe a hug is like way down here. It's like, okay, that's pretty damn normal. That is very low weird. Like an active dangerous stalker for a musician, that is very high weird. That is like, I would say like a fan asking, "Can I just lick your face?" Because I've got my own like YouTube viewers, and it's like I've got like maybe 1% of your you know my audience is maybe 1% the size of yours, but we've got this ongoing running joke where like I will live stream while doing jigsaw puzzles and talk about how I want to lick your face. So just like one quick little lick for the camera, just to entertain other weirdos on the internet. I think Justin Wang would probably put that like right about here. Like that's kind of weird. That's kind of weird, but if you're asking, then it's like okay, that's pretty low. But if a fan is just like like not even asking, then that's this weird. So it's like about halfway between like handshake, like normal to stalker dangers. I like just like just like not even asking, just like us, just like assaulting his face with my tongue. That would be like right around here. It's like they're gonna want to keep an eye on me the rest of the night. And if I prove just yeah, and they're gonna want to keep an eye on me the rest of the night and hope I'm just really awkward. you know, Probably not dangerous, but just keep an eye on that weirdo. But asking, I'd say that's like kind of right around here. It's like, okay, that's unusual, but you asked, and your explanation about other weirdos on the okay, yeah, I'm all about weirdos on the internet. Sure, let's entertain other weirdos on the internet, because. And I don't know, maybe he'd make a video about that. Like, oh yeah, one time a fan just like asked to lick my face, and here's what it was like. Tales from the Internet, Future Edition. Actually, I am a Tales from the Internet because I will still get people like occasionally like emailing me or something, or like DMing me and asking if I am indeed the person who has now on several occasions thrown underpants for Bella Morte. I have seen Bella Morte and the Amino Acids both about 6 times live. They are the two bands I have seen more than any other bands. Like they're tied for like most seen bands. For Bella Morte, like I like their music fine. It's not my favorite, you know, in the studio albums, but it's good. They're good musicians, right? But what keeps me going to their show is they put on an amazing goddamn show. They just have this amazing stage presence that you gotta be a part of it. If you've got a chance to see Bella Morte live, you just go. They like I said, they have an amazing stage presence. They are You will not regret it. Like, even if like gothic rock and dark wave are not usually your bag, still just go. If you like alternative slash punk rock, in general, like broad brush, just go see Belmorte. They're worth it. You will not regret it. Like in the studio, they're good musicians. They're good musicians. I wouldn't say they're anything especially worth writing home about. Obviously, it speaks to a lot of people. Like I said, they're really good at what they do. They're great guys. They're great guys. Andy, Andy's great, and he's such a good sport about about getting panties thrown at him by a tiny weirdo who has done it in now like 3 cities. Like I said, people will still ask me, like, "Are you the one who threw panties for Bill?" I'm like, "God damn right!" And when they were in Detroit, it was panties from the liquor store across the street from the venue that legit were like marked for $1.50. The finest $1.50 liquor store panties. Like, I used my cane to like reach up and grab the $1.50 pair when like there were like $2.50, $3 pair like right at eye level with me. I'm like, no, man. No, man. Andy needs the high quality $1.50 liquor store panties. And you're getting top quality panties from a liquor store, right? Like, seriously, like only in Detroit have I seen a liquor store that sells ladies' underpants. But they do. It's I forget the name of the place, but it's like right across the street from Smalls in Hamtramck, which is Hamtramck is like the donut hole of Detroit. So like here's Detroit. Detroit is the donut. Hamtramck is the donut hole. Like say like you put the donut hole pastry like right on top of like the hole itself. That is Hamtramck. So it's like a self-contained city that is completely inside the city limits of a much larger city. But there's a history about this. I don't know it that well. I'm sure it's a wild trip, and I'm sure the actual history is far more entertaining than, what you can look up on Wikipedia. Because, like, I looked up the actual history of the founding of the city of Lansing, and kids who grew up there just get such a watered down version of it when the actual founding of the city was just so much more entertaining. Like, not just the founding, but why Lansing is the state capital of Michigan is just so entertaining. Because it was spite. It became a city because out of spite. Like a couple of rich SOBs in Lansing, New York, like after Michigan became a state, this con man came up, I don't even think he was from Michigan. But he somehow knew about like a Lansing, Michigan, it's just like, oh yeah, the new state of Michigan, like Michigan's now got statehood, and like to encourage to help build the economy, we're like offering the sister city program with cities that have similar name, with cities that with small towns in Michigan that have the same or similar names to cities in other states that have already been states for much longer than Michigan has, and we've got a Lansing, Michigan. Well, After this guy conned these three rich SOBs out of their money, and probably a bunch of others. Like these three, though, decided to go in and check in on their investment in Lansing, Michigan. And when they got to Michigan, they discovered that the Lansing, Michigan, at the time was an unincorporated community that, was described as an insignificant village that was like barely more than like a trading post, a general, like a horse, like a riding post, for like to like rope in your horse when you get to the place. They had they like had a general store, a few houses. Not a really good idea on the population because, like I said, it was like an unincorporated community. I see it described both ways in some stuff. Some say it was still an unincorporated community at the time. Others say it was like a properly recognized but very insignificant village. So they decided, okay, well, just so we don't feel like we got completely conned. Let's actually like put some real money into this since we now have our names attached to it. We came all the way out here for this, so let's put some more money into this and like as a gesture of good faith to these people who didn't even realize they were part of a con, right? So just like to spite the con man who swindled them. They decide, no. We're actually we're gonna put in some more money and get back even more than what they stole, from what he stole from us, plus what we're putting in, right? So, yeah, like it went up from like an unincorporated / village to a decent little town out of spite, and it became the state capital out of spite. Like Lansing, the town that Spite built. City of Spite. Because, let's see, after, during it called the French and Indian War, Detroit at the time was the capital of Michigan, and it was seized by the French. And after regaining control of the capital, Michigan governor decided, okay, we don't want the French coming for us again. So let's take a strategy of moving the capital a bit more landlocked. Like let's landlock the capital a bit, and hopefully this will deter the French in the future, and we will live happily ever after. And so the two biggest contenders for state capital at the time were Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor. And the local cultures of Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor have not changed significantly since then. Grand Rapids is still considered very conservative, very, very conservative Christian. A lot of Baptists out in Grand Rapids, so conservative Christian and mean. Baptists are fucking mean. So yeah, and Ann Arbor, though it has definitely seen better days in this sense, Grand Rapids thought it was just scandalous that Ann Arbor was a pretty hot contender because they let women go to medical school there. Oh my gosh, we can't have that. We'll have a suffragette for the governor, even though women weren't legally allowed to vote at the time. So, so they're just like, what? So like the two cities were just like smearing each other in the press, like back and forth. And it was getting really ugly. Like, I think Battle Creek, was a pretty strong. I think Battle Creek was a pretty strong like runner-up. Like after either of the other two. And maybe Kalamazoo a bit behind Battle Creek. Jackson was also just like, hey, we'd like to be state capital. And if you've been to Jackson, Michigan, it's bigger than Adrian. Like, I'll give it that. At least Adrian had the sense to be like, why would we want to be state capital, right? Yeah. it's like we've already got the opera house and the trains come through here nicely, so why would we want to be state capital? Well, let's see. Well, and then the highways came in and killed Adrian. Um, that's a true story. A lot of cities died because of the highways. That there are many videos about this on YouTube, and there's been a couple like respectable documentaries even as well. But then what happens? So yeah, Lansing um wasn't even considering running. Like nobody from the city of Lansing was making any kind of campaign to to put in a bid for Lansing to be the state capital of Michigan, because at the time, yeah, it had been brought up from, you know, a very insignificant village to a respectable but insignificant small town, right? Like it was a nice little place to live, but didn't have much going for it. Didn't have much going against it either, but like it was just nothing really to write home about. It was a nice town, but at the time, like before it was state capital, but nothing to write home about in either direction. It wasn't especially good, wasn't especially bad. It was small. It um like in spite of being built up from spite, it had some things going for it, but it also had some things not so much. Like it had some pretty thriving little farms around there, but then so did a lot of other cities, right? So, so the governor picked Lansing just on his own. The governor of Michigan at the time of relocating the state capital from Detroit to another city just picked Lansing all on his own out of the blue without any bids from Lansing for state capital, because Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor were smearing each other in the press. It was getting ugly. Yeah, there were a couple other cities that people really wanted and thought would be respectable state capitals, but the smear campaigns between Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor, like Ann Arbor's just like, oh no, if Grand Rapids is the state capital, they'll turn Michigan into a theocracy, and we'll never be allowed to practice medicine without, like we'll go back to like humors, and stuff, and leeches, right? Like we're trying to get away from leeches right now. That's what the medical school here is doing, and if women want to do that, sure, why not? And Grand Rapids was like, oh no 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 no! If we let Ann Arbor be the state capital, they're gonna put a suffragette in the governor's mansion, and it's gonna be and all the girls will be wearing bloomers, and we won't be able to tell men from women anymore, and they'll put a suffragette who's been to their medical school in the governor's mansion, and all the girls will be wearing bloomers, and we won't be able to tell men from women anymore. And you think this is a new thing, but no, it is a thing. Like people have been complaining, like older generations have been complaining about the androgyny and like the dissolving of gender, of gender conformity, and like the younger generations for centuries. For so long, this has been going on since before even the suffragettes, right? But okay, yeah, sure, go and pretend that this is a new thing. Guy my dad's age who definitely remembers the Beatles, and all the journalists at the time saying, "Oh yeah, they look like girls because they've got hair past their ears." Like sure, yeah, this androgyny is a brand new thing with the youngins. Person who definitely remembers David Bowie in 1972, Ziggy Stardust first come out. Sure, this is new. Whatever you say, Grandpa. No, don't insult grandfathers like that. Some grandfathers are fucking cool. Where was I going? So yeah, so like what I imagine, just because like this is it was just so random. It was so random. Lansing became the state capital of Michigan so randomly. Like I said, there were no bids. There were no bids for Lansing to be the state capital. The governor just picked this out of the blue one day, just announces it, and people were laughing at him. Like, people thought he was insane for this. And he says, look, like, none of the, like the two, you know, the two best contenders for the state capital just would not stop smearing each other. So, and I didn't want to, like, incur the wrath of either of those cities if I picked one of the other, top five contenders. So screw it. So see, like, what I imagine, so like, you look at the state of Michigan on a map. So it's gonna be like a mitten. I don't know which way this is gonna look for you, but like, so Lansing is about here. Now, the watered down version that kids who grow up in Lansing get is, oh, it's one of the most centrally located cities. It's the most centrally located city in the state of Michigan. That's the watered down version that many kids growing up in Lansing get. But if you look at it, it's like relative to everything, Lansing is not really centrally located, like not in the truest sense. Like if you wanted the centermost city, the centralmost city in the state of Michigan, I don't know what the hell is up here. I don't know what the hell is up here, but you'd want something a little bit more here. But Lansing is a bit more here, right? Lansing is a bit more here. It's just a little bit south of the center. And when you consider that at the time, Lansing was a respectable but insignificant small town, barely larger than a village by population, and it's, which they don't always teach kids growing up there in school, like when they get to the state history, the city history, they don't always teach them the fact that Lansing was a tiny little town at the time. They didn't even make a bid to be state capital at the time because they were that small. They were that far from the cultural zeitgeist in either direction from either side of the state. This was just like a little town at the time. Like, what was that? Like 1860 or something? Like, this was just like a little town that, it was just like a lot of people who just where everybody knew each other, and and all that, and because it was that small, and but like I said, so it's not the centralmost city. In fact, like when you get to when you look at the historical populations, like I think the centermost proper city might have been a little bit further up here, about maybe at the time. I'll have to look that up a bit more. But yeah, so Lansing wasn't even a city by population. Lansing never even made a bid to be state capital. So what very likely happened, he probably put the state up on he probably put a little map of the state up on his dartboard, or about where his dartboard would be, right? Aimed for the center, and it was just a little bit off center. So, not perfect bullseye, but just close enough to be a respectable score still. The city of Lansing is the state capital of Michigan because it was chosen by, it was decided by a dart shot. It was decided by a single shot onto a dartboard. That is what happened. That is almost certainly how it happened, because, like I said, it didn't make a legit bid to be capital. It wasn't a significant town at the time. It was barely, larger than a village by population. It was respectable, but nothing to write home about. And yet, the two biggest contenders for state capital, when talking about moving it from Detroit, the two biggest contender cities had representative from each of one smearing the other city, and the governor just got sick of it and decided, fuck it, I'm just going to decide the state capital by dartboard because fuck it. He just this is almost certainly how it happened. like you like look at the evidence of everything else, look at the facts, and you can say that yeah, Lansing was not only like brought up from a trading post out of spite, like a really cutting off your nose to spite your face kind of spite, because it's like they were still sinking money into this thing. Either they were still sinking more money into this thing either way. They just didn't want to feel like fools after they came to check in on their investment, only to discover that they'd been swindled. Um, so it became more than a trading post out of spite. It became the state capital out of spite. Lansing is the state capital built on spite. This is the capital that spite built. Lansing is the city that spite built. It is the grandest city that spite built because it is a political hub that was founded on spite. It's just I can't help but love Lansing for that reason. Do I want to live there again? I don't know. Maybe. I'd like to find some doctors that I like. Or at least someone who will regularly shuttle me back and forth to Domino Farms in Ann Arbor to continue seeing my current doctor, who has been my doctor since I was 14. So yeah, like Lansing has legit like the best founding story for any state capital in the entire United States. You cannot convince me of otherwise, because it is the state capital built by spite. It became a city because of spite. It is the spitiest city. That's probably why Best X loves living there. Because it's the city of spite. And Best X likes to go on about how spite strengthens him, much like his cat Bob. I swear to God, that cat lived to be 20 years old out of spite. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm a bit more into the puzzle this week than I was last week. But I'm still, I don't know. I love this. I love the design on it. I love the painting. Like I said, it's Josephine Wall. Like, yeah, her work is pretty kitschy. But like, as far as like her technical proficiency goes, I would put her about on par with like some of the better Renaissance painters. She's actually really good. It's just, like her, by all technical merit, she is very good. It's just like her color palette is so bright and kitschy, and so like she's got this reputation as just being like this tragically kitschy, like Thomas Kincaid kind of artist, but I'm just like, she's a lot better, and a lot of her work, like, it crosses from, like landscape and portraiture into like art, because so much of it is just like so emotive as well. Just, for some reason, like, I don't know, like every time I sit down to do this, like last week I was just like very deep in my depressive mode and making myself do stuff just to get stuff done, just so that I'm not sitting around and being a glorified lump, right? Like last week I was making myself do stuff and couldn't get into it. This week this week I want to get into it. I really do. I've made. I've actually made a bit. I've actually made a. Like, not counting the border, which is like fairly low effort progress. You know, because you like you look for the pieces that are flat on one side, right? So it's like all things considered, I think I've technically made a bit more progress this week than I did last week. When you consider that, like I said, like the border, you know, the edge pieces are just kind of low effort in terms of like serious progress and all that. But I don't know, like I had like I went to go pick up my meds today, and I kind of absent-mindedly just like kind of held something in my hand and started walking off. And I didn't even put it in my pocket, but like you know, like um, it was a bottle of nail varnish, and the young lady who was working there. And I understand that I hadn't seen her there before, and I've been going to that Walgreens like that is my Walgreens when I'm living in the area, right? So I've been going there um, damn near 20 years to get my meds filled and all that. Um, like I said, damn near 20 years at this point, and like this was the first I'd seen her, so I'm under the impression that she's new, relatively speaking. And I understand that, you know, from where she's sitting, she thinks she's doing her job right. So then, why then, like, okay, she wants to stop me, ask me, even though I was later told by the shift manager that their policy is not even to really confront customers about it just because, you know, in potential shoplifting, you know, like, and in this case, I was not intentionally shoplifting. I was just like I'd been off um my I'd been off the lower like the instant release dose of my Adderall. So like I take two doses. I take an extended release capsule with breakfast, and then I take a fast release tablet with lunch. And I'd been off that extra tablet, and like even like the extended release capsules, I hadn't had one of those like the in the proper dosage. I'd had one in the smaller dosage, which might not even be as potent anymore. I've been going on a couple of those for my extended release dose for like 2 days, and I'd been completely out of the fast release tablets for just as long. So like I've basically been off my meds, you know, for a couple of days. One of the meds that makes it like easier to collect my thoughts and all of that, you know, right? Um, Slightly less absent-minded. And so yeah, like here I am, like off my meds for a couple of days, go and pick up those meds. One of the reasons that I didn't go get them yesterday when I should have is because the Walgreens app, as I mentioned at the beginning of the street, the Walgreens app was telling me that they were open until 9 in the evening on Saturday. And while I kind of knew that wasn't correct, I was off my meds for a couple of days already, so I was kind of like hoping that maybe it was. But of course, like I managed to find my right mind, you know, like my better thinking abilities just before I go out to the bus stop to go to the Walgreens and pick up my meds. And I did that at around like quarter after 6. And of course, I ask for pharmacy hours. Pharmacy had just closed at 6 on Saturdays. Even though the app said 9, The app said they were open until 9, but no, the app lied to me. And so that's why I went to go get them today, because I wasn't thinking straight yesterday. Granted, I never think straight, right? Well, unless you're considering like straight in the sense of like half the population of Grindr in any one city. Like seriously. Uh, the best ex used to said stuff like, like he has no idea why the hell everybody says bisexual guys are confused when like if the world of online, dating sites is anything to go by, it's guys on dating sites who identify themselves as straight, yet go around looking for dick. You know, those guys seem confused. Whereas the guy who knows he's bisexual, like, and is willing to admit it in public, no, that is not a confused man. That is a man who knows exactly what he wants. He wants either boobies or wiener, or sometimes both together, or hoo-ha and no boobs, and sometimes both together, right? Like that is what a bisexual guy wants. Like to be as vague and like to be as crass as possible, I suppose. But like no, you go on a grinder, like I'm like, there's no way like all these guys are as straight as they're claiming, especially when they're going out looking for dick. Like these are, of course you actually like talk to them and it's like, and they're like, and they sound like they're like barely 2 years past like the whole like schoolyard taunt of, well, if your balls don't touch, it's not really gay sex. I'm like, so anal missionary, where you're looking longingly into your bro's eyes as you plow or get plowed. Yeah, that sounds completely not gay. Like, like anal missionary. Oh, so like where you can kiss while you're doing it, but like the balls aren't touching, so it's not gay, right? Oh yeah, that sounds completely not gay. uh, Grinder is a weird and hilarious place. Okay, I really want to get into this right now, but my brain is not letting me, and I don't feel like just rambling on at the camera anymore. I kind of want to make dinner. So I think I'm putting off more Puzzlestream until either next Sunday or sometime between now and then. Because, like I said, I want to get into it right now, but my brain's not letting me. My brain is all just like, no, no, do this section. No, do this section. No, but you can do this section too. And I'm like, but I should focus on one section at a time. But my brain is all just like, but there's so many sections. You are a week behind. You were trying to get into this last week. Why can't you get back into this? And I'm like, but maybe let me focus. So yeah, so like I'm back on my meds as of today. And yeah, and I had like a big stressful thing because like this young lady, and I'm sure like I said, I'm not faulting her too much because I'm sure from where she's sitting, she thinks she was doing her job right, but then she like just went and started doubling down on insisting that she saw me put like it in my pocket, even though the nail varnish, like when she said like what she was talking about, and like I took it out of my hand and I just like dropped it in a basket that was like right by the door. I was just like, oh, this, and just dropped it there. And she said, and now in your pocket. And I'm like, I didn't put anything in my pocket. Yes, you did. I saw you. And I'm just like pulling shit out of my pocket. Like, no, you didn't. You didn't see me put anything in my pocket because here's what's in my pocket. One of my gloves, a goddamn fidget cube, which ended up broken, and a couple pieces of paper and like a penny. Like this is what you saw me in my pocket because I didn't put anything in my pocket. And it turned into this big stressful thing with when she went and got the manager, like first time I'd seen like a goddamn employee, like employee call a manager on me, you know, and he is listening to her double down on insisting that she saw me put it in my, and I'm like, no, I literally did not. I emptied out my pocket to prove to you that you didn't see me put anything in my pocket. You may have thought that at the time, but I proved to you that you literally did not see me put anything in my pocket because there was nothing in my pocket that shouldn't have been there. If it didn't happen, then you didn't see it happen. So, which is it? Because if you saw it happen, if you insist you saw it happen, then you are admitting that you are crazy, that you are delusional, because clearly you didn't see it happen, because it didn't happen, because I proved it didn't, because it wasn't in my pocket. It was in the goddamn basket that I dropped it into right at the door. But you weren't paying attention to that. So, no. It's like I said, like, on the one hand, I know she thinks she's doing her job right. I know, she wants to be a good employee and all of that, and all of that. But at the same time, it's like, just like, please don't double down on customers, especially after you've been proved wrong by one. Just like, that's not part of doing your job right. That's part of, I don't know, overcompensation for something or other. I don't know. But what I do know is that it's not part of doing your job right, because like if the customer has literally proved that it didn't happen, stop insisting it happened. It's like, it doesn't make you look better. It makes you look like a dick. And I even said to the managers, like, look, I'm sure if like the positions were reversed, she would have gotten just as frustrated and angry with me as I've gotten with her right now about this, because it literally did not happen. She may say it did, but all evidence points to nope. And if I had been the one doubling down and insisting it did, then she wouldn't have wanted me to hear the end of it either, Like she wouldn't have wanted to let me get away with doubling down and insisting it did. Like, okay, yeah. All things considered, I think I've made slightly more progress this week than I did last week, but my brain's not letting me. Like, I had stress earlier today, and I really want to get into it, but my brain's just like, no, no, no. Your thoughts are still like going and trying to figure out which part you want to do, most and completed and all that. So just put the puzzle away for now. And hope the cats don't go and sell pieces for crack. No, they wouldn't sell it for crack. They'd sell it for catnip. Okay, and I hope the liquor store at the corner is open past midnight on Sundays. Like, I know they're predominantly a liquor store, which In Michigan, you can't sell alcohol past midnight on a Sunday night. Um, so, but they're also like a convenience store for stuff, and I've wanted like, um, they've got the Talenti sorbets there, and I want one of those right now. Um, just because of all the shouting I was doing while the overzealous um, um, uh, more chats that I didn't get to see. Cherry Blossom, congrats on movie. Thank you so much. Cherry Blossom is also crocheting and doing granny squares. Heard of the Black Capes, Flesh Field. Oh yeah, I've heard of all of them. Siska says hello, hi. So good to see you. Always amazed how you can make a blanket or. Yeah. All right. Well, no. As always, feel free to hit like if you enjoyed watching all this nonsense and all of that. Links for various stuff and nonsense in the description box below. Much thanks to Patreon supporters Susie Bika and Karen L. One last shout out to my friend Allie Valkyrie, former Patreon supporter, but apparently she's having some financial juggling that she had to do, and oh well, it was good while it lasted, and hopefully she'll be able to again. Yeah, other than that, you can join their ranks, get a shout out, and if you have more dollars and cents, I might call you up and sing at you once a month at a time and date of my choosing. I don't know what the hell else is going on right now, so bats and kisses, Nosta Akwil.